Hey there everybody, I am Jeff. This is Tabletop Toolbox, and I am back with another worst unboxing ever. Now, what does that, hang on. Now, what does that mean exactly? Well, relax. This has nothing to do with the game itself. You see, in most unboxing videos, someone is showing you a game for the first time, and you and they really have no experience with the components in that box. But in the video that you are about to see, I have already opened this game, I have already organized this game, and I have even played this game, which means I can give you a little bit more insight into what those components do and how they interact with each other. Now, this isn't a review. I'm not here to tell you what I think. I may share some of my initial opinions, but other than that, I am just showing you what's in this box to give you a little bit more of an idea if it's something you'd like to look into. So with all that being said, let's lift the lid. All right, I have here in front of me the quite big, the quite popular Galactic Cruise. This is from Kinson Key Games. Here's a three-man design crew with credit on this TK King, Colton Thompson, Dennis Northcott, and it is, of course, illustrated and contains graphic design from the illustrious Ian O'Toole. Now, there is a lot in this box. That should come as no surprise to you. I'm going to try and keep this streamlined and on point. So let's go ahead and open this bad boy up. Up first, we have, of course, our player trays. I'm going to open these in a moment and kind of get into the components of just one of them. For now, let me go ahead and get them out of the way. I will then show you this. This is your sort of a tray of customers and also the cruise tiles. Give you just a quick look at what those look like. You can sort of see here. You've got a standard cruise. This is a quite simple one, only 2 fuel. You're heading to you're first going to have a sort of destination in space or hang out on the ship, and then you have I believe these are the thrilling or the excitement customers that will be happy at that particular location. And there's a bunch of different types of cruises. Some of them are much more involved. Here's a slightly bigger one. This one takes 4 fuel. You have 2 days in space, and you have a destination for your thrill-seeking customers and for your relaxing, sort of zen customers. So those are some of the other options you might see on these cruises. All right, let's get this out of the way for now. You then also have your resources. Now these, I should mention that this is the future CEO sort of pledge level for this. I have the upgraded deluxe bits, which really I think this is about it for the deluxe components. We have some metal coins here, your 5s and 1s. These are called advertisements, and you have a 1 count and a 3 count. These are a very nice, tasty looking acrylic plastic piece. And I have 2 trays of that here in the box. All right, let's keep going. I'll also mention that I have all the expansion content. There's only 2 expansions for this. There is the accommodations and the advancements expansions, and there are a couple different components for each of those expansions, but the primary addition are these. These are the blueprint tiles for the modules that you'll be building into your rocket. And I want to kind of be specific. This is the side of this tray. This is the standard. This is what comes in the base game. And then this one here should be, this is the accommodations. You might be able to see here, there's a little bed icon for the accommodations. And this one here is the advancements with these little arrows. Now what these, like I said, these are modules. So when you're playing with the expansions, you just pick one of these 3 trays of the modules to put out for your gameplay. There are a couple of extra components for each of the expansions. I'll try to identify those as I continue to get down through this box, but I'll circle back to those in just a little bit. Here are your, let me see, these are the tail pieces of your rocket. So these start off on the board. They'll kind of have, you might be able to see it here. There's a little bit of a hashing across these tiles. This is the back side, and this is the front side. Now the back side, you get the bonus the moment that you build that rocket into your tableau. You take the bonuses, in this case 2 money and a resource, and then you flip it over, and this just kind of sits at the bottom of your rocket like that. These are the nose cones, nose cones, sort of the cockpit, if you will, of your rockets. Now these start off also on the hashed side, and they have a negative 5-point value that you'll score at the end of the game if you never launched this rocket. If you do manage to launch it, you'll flip it over, you'll score the benefit here at the bottom immediately, and then you score that again at the end of the game, which is pretty nice. You can get a lot of points off of these nose cones. All right, let's keep going. Here we have, these are tiles that you can use for your advanced workers, your scientists that you will be employing throughout the game. And I'll show you what those pieces look like here in a moment. One of these is pre-printed on the board, and I can actually show you which one that is. I believe it's this one right here. This one is showing you that when you use your scientists to bump another worker, you get to take a funding bonus. And I'll try to quickly show you those on a player board when we get to it. All right, so there's a bunch of different ones of these. You only use one of them in a game, but you got a lot of variety there. These have a name. I can't remember what they're called, but they sit at the bottom of the cruise board where all the cruises are on display. And these simply cover up a couple options based on your player count. You use both of them in a 2-player game, one in a 3-player, and none of them in a 4-player game. Here we have a first player marker. Very nice but simple looking tile. Here we have some tokens for the solo game. This is how your AI opponent will score objectives throughout the game. The company bonuses the players get are handled differently in the solo game. These are development tokens, these little cogs, but these are for the neutral player that sort of start off. And almost all of your player counts, you're going to use a number of these. I believe you use all of them in a 4-player, 2 in a 3-player, and just 1 in a 4-player game. And these just kind of clog up the development tracks between the action locations on the main board. I'll show you those here in a moment. Here we have just a couple little tokens. These are used for tracking resources on the main board. You can actually sort of collect resources from the company, and so you'll use these to track those levels. These little cheese wedges here are for the company goals. You'll use these in all player counts to sort of track progress on the company goals. And then there's 2 different sizes of cubes here, and I'll just cover these super quickly. The small ones are actually from the advancement expansion, and those are used to track progress on technologies. There's this kind of idea that in the advancements expansion, the technologies that come out for all players to research can sort of be improved throughout the game, and the small cubes are used to track that. The large cubes are used on the progress track at different player counts, and what they do is they kind of shorten the length of the game. The more of those cubes you put out into that progress track, the quicker your game will go in Galactic Cruise. These tokens up here are a couple different ones. There are 5 of them that you will use for the bonuses that your customers will give you when you're staying in space during a cruise. So you have a couple different options there. And then there are some specific ones here. These are for the accommodations expansion. You can see the little accommodations logo in the corner of the tile, and you'll use these when you're using that expansion, because you don't actually trigger the bonuses for the customer. You trigger the bonuses that are pre-printed on the module of the accommodations expansions. All right, real quick, last couple things here in this tray. We've got agenda cards, a bunch of agenda cards, maybe about 50 or so. These are really nice cards. These are used for pretty powerful effects throughout the game. Let me just kind of show you a couple of these. These are multi-use cards, and I know a lot of people get excited over multi-use cards. So you can generally use these while you're taking an action, and that action will be depicted in the top right corner. If there is no action shown, you can simply play it at any time to take that effect. And in addition, you can discard these cards to simply get the resource shown in the bottom corner. So it's kind of a either or ability with these cards, although there is a tech you can get that lets you trigger both, and that's pretty sweet. Now, the rest of this stuff here is a lot of it's for solo play. Now, actually, these cards are not. So these are part of the accommodations expansion. And there's a ton of these here. Actually, there's a ton of variability in these. Each player gets 2 of these if you want to use this variant, and they will pick one to use. And what it does is it basically takes one of your advancements, one of the upgrades that you can take on your player board. It tells you which one you get to trigger. So in this case, you're going to get 4 money. In this case, you're going to get 3 reputation, so on and so forth. And then it tells you specifically where to put that token on your player board. This gives you a permanent technology through the rest of the game. And in fact, it's funny, this one's on top. This is the first one that I ever used in the game. It gave me an extra 4 cash at the start of the game, and it let me treat my regular workers as if they were scientists when I placed them. And that's how I was able to trigger this ability I was showing you earlier on the main board every time I placed one of those basic workers. That was pretty handy. I liked it. Anyways, so these are a variant that you can use. Like I said, there's a bunch of those cards. Now let me go ahead and mention this. These are some extra nose cones and tail pieces that do not fit in these boxes. So these are from the advancements expansion, and I can just barely wedge these in, and if I really shove it down in there, it kind of stretches the cardboard. So unfortunately, the expansions The 2 tokens, there's only 2 of these that come with that expansion. They do not fit in the trays of the base game. A bit of a bummer, if I'm honest. Might be able to stick them down in that little reservoir. And then these are for the solo game. I actually do not remember what these are for. I think these are giving you some cards you can use to sort of track the placement of the AI worker in the solo game. And then this is how you trigger the action. So it kind of has this front of one, back of the other type of idea. So when you are taking a turn for your solo opponent, you're going to trigger one of the actions on this card, and you're going to place the worker for the AI in this location. And then these numbers on the bottom are sort of used to help determine what the AI opponent will take if they have an option. So if they're taking a certain number of agenda cards or resources, they'll use these numbers on the bottom of these cards to kind of help you determine what the AI does. All right, let's keep moving. Let's keep moving. Put these back. Put these back. Now, I'll also point out, these trays are game trays. They're nice trays, but for some reason I've been seeing a lot of games lately where they do not put the edge of the tray on. So I can very easily just slide these cards right out of the game tray. I don't know why we're seeing this trend lately in these inserts, but I don't like it. Anyways, let me carefully place that out of the way. All right, here we have the, of course, rulebook. Training manual. This sucker is 48 pages, including an index on the back, which is pretty handy. I'll give them that. I will also go ahead and mention this. If you get the expansions, in fact, if you get the base game and you don't get the expansions, the rules to the expansions are here in the main rulebook, pages 44 through 47. So here is the advancements rules, and here's the accommodations rules. It's nice that they're in here. I will say that, because then you're not fishing through multiple booklets to try and find the rules. But when I got the expansion boxes and I opened them and I'm like, oh gosh, there's no rules in here, I kind of panicked. Well, this tells you where they are. Solo rules are in here, of course, as well. It's a fairly well organized rule book, but there is a lot of these kind of bullet items. You kind of get these, here's kind of a general note, and here's kind of like some tips, and here's an example. And so you got all these different color-coded boxes. It can be a little convoluted sometimes if you're really trying to find an answer, or if you're reading this thing cold for the first time, as I did. It's a little disorienting, if I'm honest. I think it's well made. It looks fantastic, but it really sort of segments the data in a way that can become a little difficult if you're used to just reading top to bottom, left to right. All right, you don't really get to do that necessarily with this book. But I digress. I'll keep moving on. Here is a little guide, I think, on how to organize your box. And that's certainly nice. We always appreciate that. Here's a cute little just write-up about the game. This is fictitious, but if you read this, you'll think that it's real. This is kind of the story of Galactic Cruise, basically the introduction of the theme into this game. Now, this book I'm a little less impressed with. This is your company records. This is supposed to be sort of a reference tool for a lot of the iconography and such. There are some references to game variants in here. Here are just a whole page of tips. Here is some helpful icons on all of those advanced scientist actions I mentioned. Here's your upgrade tokens. That's good. All the different scorings of the cockpit tiles, which I already showed. Those are good. Here is some just sort of references on the 2 expansions. And this is a guide of all of the icons that you will see on the accommodations. Oh, no, that's the wrong one. All of these tiles, which have unique icons on them at the top of the artwork, are all referenced here. And that's good. That's great. I'm very happy with that. Unfortunately, we have 2 pages that are blank. I don't know what their thought is with this, if they think we're going to put giant stickers on those sheets or what. But now here is descriptions of all of the base tiles, all of those modules that you can put into your rocket, but it's all just flavor text. This is not a reference. This is just sort of eye candy, cutesy little lore, which is fine. But if you go into this thinking that this is a front to back reference guide, it's not. It's just a lot of flavor text and all your play testers and credits and thank yous, which is, it's okay. It's just not exactly what I was looking for. Here's the main board. We'll come back to that. Here are the player boards. We'll come back to these. Let me go ahead and set these where I can get back to them fairly quickly. Here we have the cruise board. I was kind of mentioning this briefly. This is what those tiles cover based on your player count. So it just blanks out those locations based on your player count. And then your customers are sort of stored in this queue, and they become more expensive to advertise to the higher up this queue you go. I'll demonstrate that just a little bit further. Now, let me go ahead and mention this right now. These are the action tiles for the game. They're two-sided with the same artwork on each side. So you can play a variant of the game. You can play the standard setup of the game, I should say, where all the actions are pre-printed on the main board. Or you can use these and completely randomize all the locations of all the actions. I have not played with this variant yet. I can't imagine what that does to the game. I'm sure it makes it very interesting and very unpredictable, but I've already kind of gotten spoiled, I think, by the way the base actions are set up, and I'm a little nervous to try that. These are technologies that you can get throughout the game. Some of these come also pre-printed on the board, like this one, which makes all of your module costs $1 less. This makes all of your launches require 1 less food. Apparently your pilot doesn't eat. 1 less fuel for all of your launches, and then there's a bunch of others here, of course, that you can use as you wish. And the backside of these things are used for some setup, either during a 3 or 4 player game once, or you use these frequently in a 1 or 2 player game to add out additional sort of restrictions, if you will, or sort of embellish the board a little bit as if you had an extra player at the table. These are the technologies for the advancements expansion. So as I was kind of mentioning, they have this little track at the top, and as you use this technology, you're going to be moving a cube, those smaller cubes I mentioned, across this track. I read the rules on this. I don't exactly remember how it works, and I have not used it yet. The backside of these does the same thing for various setup. All right, moving along. Here we have, these are company goals. This is the one that is pre-printed on the board, but you also have a bunch of these that you can use. So players earn these throughout the game, and as a player earns them, they potentially become more difficult to be earned by additional players or future players. Everyone has an equal shot at these, however. They just get a little harder. And also, as these are gained, as they're earned, they sort of advance the timing of the game, and that is tracked using this. Now, this is going to be a little hard to show just because they are individual pieces, but this is what makes the progress track of this game. You can see I've got the numbers 1, 2, and 3. There are 3 years in which you play the game, but it's a varying number of rounds for each year. It's not 3, 4, and 3 as you see here, but basically every time that you make a rocket launch, or every time that one of those company goals are achieved, a cube gets moved into one of these spaces, and as each of these tiles fills up, that triggers a brief little meeting, which is just a little mid-game scoring. Generally not very, very high points from those rounds, but it can happen. And they're also set up by player count. So if you look at the backside here, I've got tiles for the 1 to 2 player game, which is what I most recently played. And so this is, again, sort of variable length of the game based on number of players, which actually keeps it fairly consistent. The 4-player game will move a little quicker than the 2-player game, but that kind of means that, your 4-player games don't get very, very long in duration. All right, let's tuck these back away. A few other things here to mention. Down here in the bottom of the box, I have employee handbooks. Now, these are very nice. These are your player aids for the game. They are very concise, to the point. All of your actions are detailed. Some bonus anytime on your turn actions. I actually found this just the other day, kind of by accident. Here it shows your reputation, money, advertisements, resources. How do you get those things, and what are they used for? So if you're sitting there going, gosh, how do I get more money? This right here will tell you all the different ways that you can go about getting more money in the game. Doesn't mean you can actually pull them off, but it's nice that they gave us some tips. Some definition of the various company goals, the process of launching a ship, how you add a new cruise once a ship is launched, the different upgrades that you can find on your player board for each of those locations, turn structures here, pre-flight checklist. This is a lot of information because there's a lot in this game, but it does organize it very, very nicely here on these booklets. And they're a very nice linen finish. Good quality book. One last thing to show, it's tucked down here in the bottom corner. I'll just mention these real quick. These are from the advancement expansion. This is an optional component you can use in the main board. I'll show you where they go. But as you play the game, these can kind of flip over. They start off on this kind of faded gray side, and then they flip over to a darker gray side, and they just give players bonuses when they place their workers on these locations. They can trigger, in this case, it's an extra reputation for every one of their advancements that are adjacent to the action location that this tile is sitting on. So it's a way that they can get a reputation, 2 points, 2 money, or 1 agenda card throughout the game. And I really like it. It's a very streamlined, very, very simple expansion to integrate into your game. It just gives players a little bit more to work with, gives them a little shot at maybe getting, that extra buck or two that they need. And I really like that in this game. All right, let me see. I think I have everything out of here that I need. I just want to set up the main board real quick. I'm not going to try and do a teach with this. There's way, way, way too much to it. But I wanted to show you the main board. I want to show you what the player components are. And again, just make sure you have an idea of what it looks like when you've got Galactic Cruise set up on your table. All right, let's get this board out. That was inconvenient. I do want the other side. I might have to do a little magic of cinema here, but I think we're getting it. This board is no slouch, ladies and gentlemen. This is the main board. Now I still need room, and I don't have room for this board to sit off onto the side. So we'll kind of do we'll do a scooch here at some point, and I'll show you what that looks like. But before I do that, let me just walk you through this. So this is where your agenda cards go. This is where those little progress tiles are going to sit. This is your technologies that you're going to be unlocking throughout the game. These are the 12 actions of the game. Those little cogs I'd shown you, those enhancements are going to sit like this, for example. And what that does is if you take an action, if you place a worker here, which by the way is where those little tiles go that I was just showing you from the advancements expansion, they just sit right like this. And so if you went here, if these were your color, you would get 2 reputation if these were your player color. Anyways, if you place a worker on this location, you have access to these 2. And again, if these were your player color, you would also have access to these 4 actions. So there's this idea of kind of networking across these different action locations. Here's where the scientific or your scientist bonus kind of sits. Down here is your reputation track. And this is really neat. You're going to gain reputation throughout the game. It's going to give you the ability to either use another player's advancement tokens or even use their technologies. And at first those are expensive to use someone else's. Then they get a little cheaper and they ultimately become free if you're high enough on this reputation track. But you can also spend your reputation to get some of these bonuses are shown below. You don't get everything that you pass. But if you need another little shot of money, you can kind of drop some reputation and, for example, trigger all the money icons that you pass. All right, moving on over here is where your blueprints go for your rockets. And then here is where you can actually acquire new rockets. So those nose cones and tail pieces will sit here in pairs. And whenever you build a rocket, which is free, mind you, I think that's kind of interesting, you can collect those pieces. And then again, here's that cruise board. Your cruises are going to sit here. You're going to have these sort of call center folks that are going to sit here. They sit at their desk and they sell tickets. So let's actually go ahead and get to the player board and the player pieces. And I think what I'm going to do real quick is kind of snap my fingers and show you how this looks. There we go. All right, so I have a player board here set up in front of me. You can see, and I realize it kind of blends in with the board, but this is my starting rocket. There's no modules in it. Everyone has the same starting rocket. This is kind of your launch pad / mission control. So as you're triggering an actual launch, you'll follow this T-5, 4, 3, 2, 1 process of actually launching the rocket. I do have my workers laying down just so you can kind of see a little easier where they go. These are my standard basic workers. These are my 2 scientists. You have to unlock these or purchase these throughout the game. Here are your funding bonuses. They're sort of brown tokens that you'll be able to trigger several times throughout the game. In fact, I think the funding bonus is one of the biggest aspect of the game, and you can upgrade these. So this one gives me money, advertisements, points, and resources. Eventually, when you're triggering a cruise, these flip over, which means you don't get that particular bonus. But then once you launch the rocket, these come off. They go onto the rocket itself. They eventually get dropped off at these destination locations that you'll go to on a cruise, and now I have improved that funding bonus for the rest of the game. So now it gives me 2 money. This would give me 2 ads, 2 points, and any 2 resources throughout the game. Now these bottom bonuses are more of a one-time. You don't get to trigger these whenever you want. Same thing, whenever you're about to go on a cruise, you're going to get the bonus, flip the token over. When you launch, it goes on your rocket, and it comes out here like normal. Now in these spots are a bunch of really, really nice technologies that you get to unlock throughout the game. And I want to illustrate, actually, if I can, that on the main board I mentioned these technologies that are here. These players get to kind of share. So if you have the technology, a player can pay you potentially to get to use that technology. But these ones here on the player board are isolated. So if I have this component here, I can now have a 4th rocket, and my rockets can have 4 modules in them instead of just 3, but only I have that technology and no one can pay me for that benefit. Some of these are better than others, I would tend to say. This one lets you sort of overfill a rocket. This one lets you gain additional reputation whenever you would gain reputation. This one over here lets you gain every benefit on that reputation track when you go up it, which is really, really nice. This one here lets you bump your own workers, for example. When workers come back, so you have this idea, of course, that you're putting out workers on the main board to take actions, but eventually you have to call them all back, sort of having a meeting, if you will, and you get to trigger funding bonuses every time a worker is set back onto this board for every worker that comes back. So if I was setting down 3 workers in here, I would get 3 funding bonuses, and that is a very sweet little thing to get to do. These are your resources. You've got food, oxygen, and fuel. You'll use all 3 of them when you're launching a rocket. You'll need them, of course, in varying numbers. But as you start to unlock these gears, putting them out here on the main board as I had demonstrated earlier, you'll free up space to store more resources. You'll also eventually cheapen the cost of getting this scientist out. This scientist's cost is controlled by how many of these one-time bonuses you still have over here on your launch pad. And yeah, I think that's really about it. In general, this is a worker placement game, and I think I've kind of gotten that idea across. You're sort of you're competing to be the next CEO, and you're doing that by, I would say, doing all the things that a CEO wouldn't do, like handling the sort of day-to-day operations of this business. You will be trying to build these rockets. You'll be trying to pick cruises that you're going to go on, possibly building new rockets or upgrading those rockets. You'll be selling tickets to your cruises. You'll be collecting your resources and getting everything you need ready to launch that cruise. You'll be putting out these developments, gaining these technologies, getting these very, very powerful agenda cards, possibly using them for 1 or 2 different purposes on your turn. Just lots of stuff that you're doing. Now, everything about this looks and feels and smells like a Vital Lacerda game. It's not. It doesn't really have those sort of combo bonuses that you're used to seeing possibly out of a Vital Lacerda game, but what you will be doing is triggering a lot of little various incomes. So there's no big income phase of the game. You're basically just putting out workers and taking actions, or possibly foregoing that turn to instead launch one of your rockets and start the process of going on these cruises, which may span multiple turns throughout the game. But like I said, it's every time you're bringing those workers back, you're triggering funding bonuses, and there's a lot of other ways that those funding bonuses might occur. Again, these little expansions from the advancement, or these little tokens from the advancement expansion may give you additional ways to gain some income, resources, get points, whatever you may be doing. And so there's just lots of little things that you're slowly building up this engine, slowly making your actions a little bit more powerful, all while just trying to keep the cogs of this business kind of running and hopefully picking up a lot of points. Now, I will tell you, I've played this at 2, 3, and 4 players. I have done a partial solo game. The games feel very similar at those different player counts. Like, as I mentioned, you kind of have a couple of these neutral pieces that will come out to, sort of add some clutter to the board based on how many players that you have. You may have, even at the 2-player game, there is sort of a neutral piece that comes out, neutral player that comes out. They don't take any actions. You don't have to really manage them, but throughout those 3 years of the game, they'll add some additional components to the game. And it actually helps players because it improves and increases the frequency at which players might get bumped out of their spaces indie 2-player game, which again gives you more opportunities to trigger those funding bonuses. So I have enjoyed this at all the different player counts. I haven't really noticed any major difference in the length for me. Like, I kind of feel like I'm taking the same number of actions. You're going to get maybe 3, maybe 4 launches of a rocket at these player counts. You might be getting more as you get better at the game. Though I've played it a number of times already, I've still only seen about that 3 or so per player number of launches that you're taking, which means you're going to have to be very selective about these technologies that you're unlocking on your player board, because you're only going to get a certain number of them. Anyways, that is Galactic Cruise in a nutshell. I hope this video was helpful to you. I know there's a lot of content out here on YouTube about this game, so I appreciate you stopping by and checking out this videos. Thanks for stopping by the channel. Be sure to check out the Weekly Ratchet series here on Tabletop Toolbox, where I've already talked about this game a number of times, and I'll be chatting about it even again in episode number 55. That's where I played it at 2 players. So thanks again for stopping by, and I hope to hear from you again soon. Cheers.